Welcome everyone to the Siyum on Maseches Gittin. Baruch Hashem, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach. This Masechta we've been learning now for just about 3 months. We're finishing on Daf Tzadik Amud Beis, so there's 89 blat in this Masechta. So we're going to begin with the last few lines in the Masechta and make the actual Siyum, and then in Mitzvah Hashem, a Hadran from the Rebbe on the Masechta, the Hadran from the year Tafshin Yutes. A very, very Geschmack Hadran. So the last Mishnah of the Masechta brings a Machlokes Beishamai, Beisilol, and Rabbi Akiva when there's enough cause for a person to give a get for his wife. Beishamai's opinion is only if Kimotza Ba'ervas Davar. A person should only give a get if there's actually a dvar aveda that he sees in his wife. Fishel says, "Afile gedicha tafshile," even if she burns his food, which means that she doesn't listen to what her husband wants her to do. Doesn't only mean Rashi here says literally burn the food, but it means that she doesn't get along with her husband. She doesn't listen. The Rambam says that it means that they're not compatible. Their personalities, they don't get along. Rabbi Akiva says, "Afilu matzah cheres noimena." Even if there's someone else he wants to marry that in his eyes is more beautiful, he can divorce his wife. That's the machlokes. So now let's see what it says in the end of the Masechta here in the Gemara. So in the last few lines of the Masechta it says as follows. There's a pasuk in Malachi that says, "Kisonei shalach." The one that sends is hated. That's a translation of the pasuk. It's a pasuk here that the Malachi where it's Musar to Yidden, and it's in this context of a person that's sending away, being Megadish his wife. So here's the machlokes how to understand this pasuk. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Im seneisa shalach." If you come to hate your wife, then you can send her. Meaning, it's not necessarily that there's a ervas davar, not necessarily is there anything else that she's doing to offend her husband, but nevertheless, if in your eyes, like Rabbi Akiva, if in your eyes there's someone else that he wants better than her, he can send her. That's what the pasuk here is saying. So the lashon sonei goes on the husband if he hates her. Rabbi Yochanan says sonei yameshaleach. When it says sonei, it goes on the Eibishter. The Eibishter is saying, I hate one that divorces and sends his wife away. Basically, it sounds like either the opinion of Beishamai and Beisilol that says that a person shouldn't just decide to send away his wife for no good reason. The Gemara says that is v'loy pligi. There's no argument here between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan. Ha b'zivug rishon. When it comes to zivug rishon, the wife that Rashi says that a person marries, which was what's called Eishes Neurim, the first wife. So there, in such a case, the pasuk is saying that he should not send her away, and the Eibishter hates one that divorces his wife. And ha b'zivug sheni. However, when it comes to zivug sheni, here the pasuk says that if a person decides he can't live with her, for whatever reason, he may send her away. Then the Gemara brings the famous Inyan b'nigei to Gedishin, the Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said regarding Gedishin, Kol ha-megarish ishtei rishayna, a person that divorces the first wife he married, afilu mizbeach moirid all of the mois. The mizbeach cries for this person. Shenema, the pasuk says, v'zois sheinis tasu kasais dima es mizbach Hashem. You're causing the mizbeach to be covered, that is, with tears. And because of this, the Eibishter does not turn to your karbonis, and the Eibishter does not take the karbonis of Eden anymore. Then the next pasuk says, and you may say, Alma, why is this happening? Why is the Eibishter not accepting our karbonis anymore? The answer is, Al ki Hashem heyid beincha uven eishes neurecha asher atavagadet ba, because eishes neurecha, which is the wife of your youth, your first wife that you were beiged in her, you're sending her away. V'hicha virascha ve'eishes brischa, and this is your friend, your companion, the wife that you made a bond with from your youth. And if you send away this wife, the mizbeach cries, and the mizbeach does not accept any of the karbanis. That's the conclusion of the Masechta Hadran Alocha Megarish V'Slikala Masechta Gittin. So there's as I mentioned, the Hadran from the Rebbe here in Tafshin Yutes, and the reason why the Rebbe that year made the Hadran on Masechta Gittin is because as the Rebbe began the Fabrengen in the yeshiva then, They were learning Masechta Gittin. It's the end of the year. It's Chafov that this Fabrengen, the Rebbe made the Hadran. So the Rebbe made a Hadran on the Masechta that the Bachrim were learning that year. So there's many questions that the Rebbe asked on the scene of the Masechta. The first question, which the Marsha speaks about and other Mefarshim speak about, what's the connection between the Mizbeach and Gedushin? If the Pasuk, the Gemara, wants to express how bad it is when a person decides to go through with a Gedushin, was is dafke the Mizbeach? Mizbeach meired all of Dmois. That's the Shaila that the Marsha asks. And the Marsha actually says a very interesting answer. He says, when a person has a wife, so what happens? A wife naturally has to bring karbanis more often than a man. Number one, if she gives birth, there's a few karbanis she has to bring for this. Number two, if she's a zava and she becomes tahir, so there's also karbanis she has to bring for this. So if a person is married, so then how is she bringing all these karbanis? The husband is funding these karbanis, so he now is going to be bringing karbanis on the mizbeach through his wife. But if he divorces his wife, so then he won't have that opportunity to bring that karbanis that he had to bring before. That's the Marsha's pshat. So therefore the mizbeach is crying for the loss of those karbanis that would have to be brought. Interesting pshat. The Marsha actually says this in Masechta Sanhedrin. I didn't see the Marsha b'fnim. I saw it over here brought in the Sikha, but Bashka for Rishayna, there's an obvious question on this Marsha. So why is it dafke eishes neurim? That's even any wife. A person has a wife, so you can bring karbanis. But another obvious question over here, which the Rebbe asks on this Marsha, is it's a very modern pshat, that the Mizbeach is crying for the fact that it doesn't have enough karbanis. There's a Gemara in a few places.
She has to bring the karbanos anyway.
What again?
She has to bring the karbanos anyway.
But if she's not giving birth, though, if she's not, maybe the Leida. So the Leida, so then she won't have to bring the karbanos. But the Zava, the Chayre, won't be any different. But even the Zava, the husband won't have to bring it. But you're right, L'chayra, I mean, the only thing that the Mizbeach is losing is the karbanos of the Leida. The Rebbe asks, it's hard to understand this Marsha, that the Mizbeach is crying for those few karbanos that it's going to be missing. Besides that, the Rebbe brings, it's a Mishnah, and the Gemara brings it many times, that there's a concept called Kayetz HaMizbeach. From the Machzas HaShekel, they used the Machzas HaShekel for a time when there was no karbanos and the Mizbeach was empty. So they took karbanis from the funds of the Machzas HaShekel, and they would bring karbanis, so the Mizbeach shouldn't be empty. The Mizbeach was never empty. There was always karbanis every day brought in the Mizbeach, besides the karbanis Tmidim and Musafim. So that's taken care of. So what's the Mizbeach crying for? That's the Shaila the Rebbe asks. Okay, that's been a gate to the Siyum of the Masechta here. Rebbe has other diyukim over here, but a gate to the Mizbeach, but the Shaila is there has to be something unique about the Mizbeach. To explain this, the Rebbe, Be'ikir, in the Hadran here, focuses on the three opinions in the Mishnah. Mishnah brought three opinions when a person has enough ground to go ahead with a Gedushin. Shammai says, Dvar Aveda, Hillel says, Higdicha Tavshiloi, and Rabbi Kiva says, Motza Acheres Noe Mena. So the Rebbe says like this. You look at the pashtus over here in the Mishnah, what does it look like? Shammai is basically saying that a person has to do whatever it's possible to keep the shalom bayis, to keep the marriage intact, and not to go through with a Gedushin. Unless he mamish has no choice. Unless it's a situation with a Dvar Aveda, so he's going to be forced to be Megadisha. Then Hillel is saying that not to such a degree, not so far. So it looks like Hillel is being more makel. Hillel is giving the person the heter to be Megadish quicker. And Rabbi Kiva is even more makel, and he's giving a person the heter to be Megadish even quicker, just stam, not acheres noimena. So l'chayre, this fits with what we always know regarding Hillel and Shammai, that Hillel is makel and Shammai is machmer. Here as well, Shammai is machmer with giving a get, he's stringent about it, and Hillel is being more lenient about it. But the Rebbe asks that it still doesn't really fit with the usual approach of Shammai and Hillel. Why not? Because we know what it says in Chassidus B'Negeya 2, the reason why the derech klal Hillel is makel and Shammai is machmer. What's the reason? Because the sheidish of Shammai was gvuris, and the sheidish of Hillel is chsadim. That's the real reason. So because Shammai is an inyan of gvura, so they're always more stringent, B'Negeya to all kinds of isurim and things, and gzeidis and siyagim and so on. Hillel was always makel mitzad the sheidish of chesed. If so, the shaila is, over here, it comes out that Beis Shammai is the one that's is using more midas chesed. Why? Beis Shammai is more concerned about the shalom bayis. Beis Shammai is saying, let's keep the shalom bayis intact, let's do whatever it's possible to keep them together. In other words, Beis Shammai is basically telling a husband, you may have gotten angry, there may have been something that you were makpid about, but think it over. Don't rush, don't go so quick. Think about this. What exactly happened over here? You can't live with your wife, you can't figure it out. That's basically what Beis Shammai is saying. In other words, Beis Shammai is saying, don't be makpid so fast. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, is saying, the husband comes home and the supper is burnt, boom, he could decide to give a get, and al pitaira, it's okay, it's mutter. So l'cheira, to be makpid is a midah of gvura. Beis Shammai is saying that you should not use that midah of gvura. And Adarabah, Beis Hillel is the one that's saying that a person should be makpid or can be makpid and can go ahead and give a get right away. Why over here is Beis Hillel the one that's more makpid? The Rebbe brings an interesting thing from what we actually had earlier in the Masechta. The Beker, this Indian is actually brought in the Masechta Baba Basra, but it's brought in one Mishnah in Masechta Gittin as well, and Rashi there brings the whole arichas about it. There's something that's called a get makusher. If you learned Masechta Gittin, you should remember this concept. There's a get poshet, there's the regular get, and then there's a get makusher. A get makusher was made specifically for Kayanim. And the Gemara in Baba Basra says because the Kayanim are makpid, so therefore we're afraid that if they get angry, they may rush to give a get right away. So Chachamim were masakin a get, which is written, folded, and it's tied, and then the Eidim have to sign the back of the get, not the inside. Every fold has to be another signature of Eidim to delay the process of writing the get. And then hopefully he'll have time to think it over before he goes ahead with giving the get.
Because the Magdik Roshos, it cannot.
Again? And right, exactly. The reason is by a Kayin, once he divorces, he can't remarry her, because Kayin is not allowed to marry a Grusha. So what do we see? That rushing to give a get is a result of a gvura, of a nature of kipeda. And over here, Dafke Beis Hillel is the one that says that if a person is makpid, a gdicha tavshila, you can give a get. What's the pshat in this? And Rabbi Akiva is the one that says, Rabbi Akiva is the one that emphasizes the union of Ahavas Yisrael. And Rabbi Akiva is the one that comes and says that a person can just decide, he doesn't really have any adequate reason why to send away his wife, he can decide to divorce his wife. How could it be? How could Rabbi Akiva say something like this? The question that Rebbe says is even stronger. There's a famous Gemara in Masechta Ksubis, Keitzad merakten lefnei hakala. What does the Gemara there say? When it comes to the marriage, Chatchila by the Chasana, and there's the Inyan by the Chasana to be Mesameach the Kala. So how are you Mesameach the Kala? Keitzad merakten lefnei hakala. So Beis Shammai says, Kala k'moy shehi. You have to praise the Kala and be Mesameacher for what it is. You can't exaggerate, you can't say anything that's not exactly the way it is. And Beis Shammai says, Chigeres, Suma, if she's blind, if she's lame, you can't say anything not the way it is. Mashenkin Beis Hillel says, no, Kala no b'chasuda. When you come and praise a Kala by the Chasana, you're being Sameacher, you have to praise her and say that she's a Kala no b'chasuda, beautiful, and you don't see any blemishes, any chesreinis in her. So what does this mean? Over here, you see the exact opposite. Beis Hillel says, look with a positive eye. Look, see the good. There may be some chesreinis, but Beis Hillel says if a person buys an object for himself and it has a certain blemish, are you going to point out the blemish that it has? No. If he bought this object, he obviously sees only the good, and the blemish is insignificant to him. So if a person is marrying, and this is his kala, so then you should point out that it's kala no v'chasuda. So when it comes to getting married, Beis Hillel says kala no v'chasuda. When it comes to a matzah where there could be a gedushin, here Dafke Beis Hillel says that the person should look and say, she burnt my tafshel, I'm ready to divorce her. And Beis Shammai punkt verkehrt. When it comes to the chasana, Beis Shammai says that a person should not be mishabech the kala for what she's not. Mashenki Beis Hillel, by the gedushin, Beis Shammai says the exact opposite. That you have to wait to see if there's an ervas lover, otherwise you can't divorce her. So what's the pshat in this Indian? Okay, there's more pratim over here in the Sikha, but the Nekuda that the Rebbe explains, the Hadran over here, the Siyum of the Masechta, what's the teichen of this machlokes, and what's the connection to the union of the Mizbeach. So the Vart is over here as follows. when the Mishnah speaks about the union of Gittin, and the Mishnah speaks about an ish v'isha lamata, the ish v'isha here in this world is all nishtalshal from the ish v'isha lamayla. The Eibishter and Yidden are compared to ish v'isha. The entire Shir HaShirim is based on the fact that the Yidden are the isha and the Eibishter is the ish. So all the pratim that we learn about in this Masechta is all a reflection of the emes shadish of the concept of ishus, which is between the Eibishter and Yidden. That's what the Masechta is really speaking about. And therefore the machlokes here between Beishamai and Beisilul, both regarding the chasana of a chasan and kala, and regarding whether there's grounds for a gedushin between the ish and isha, is all telling us benigayat to the marriage between Yidden and the Eibishter. So what is it talking about over here? So benigayat to the chasana. When is the chasana of a Yid? The chasana of a Yid is when the neshama comes down lamata. There's a famous lashon that it says, when you get to a neshama in this world, Hai alma does linan be kibei elula damya. This world is a chasana. The neshama comes down into this world. That's the beginning of the shlichus of the neshama in this world, where the neshama begins to serve the Eibishter and to connect the elokus over here in this world. So here, what's the teichen of the machlokes between Beishamai and Beisilul? How you praise a kala, which is really the Yidden, when the Yidden come into this world. What the Gemara is talking about, and this is a pshat that the Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah and Shir HaShirim. This is actually a maimer that the Alter Rebbe said at the famous chasana, the famous Shlobina chasana, great big chasana that all the Chassidim came, and the Alter Rebbe there said many maimarim. So this is one of the maimarim that the Alter Rebbe said, Keitzad meraktem lefnei hakala. So what's this rikud? What's the dancing in front of the kala? You're dancing in front of the kala to give her encouragement, to give her simcha for the rest of her life, to be able to go forward. Neshama comes into the world, so Kaviyachal, the Eibishter dances. The Eibishter empowers the Neshama when it enters into this world. And here there's a machlokes. To what extent, what kind of Nesinas Kayach does the Eibishter give for the Neshama entering into the world? Beishamai says that the Kayach for the Neshama will be Lefierach, the kind of Aveda that it's destined to do in its lifetime in this world. Every person, the Eibishter sends his neshama into the world in a particular place, in a particular time period, in a particular community, to do a certain shlichus. There's a Yid that could be a balesek, there's a Yid that will be a yeshivayel, and all the other details in a person's family life. Every person has his particular shaydish of his neshama, his particular place, and oifen of how he's going to do his shlichus in this world. So Beishamai says, the nesinas kayach for the neshama entering into this world is according to what its shlichus in this world is, according to what it needs, based on the aveda that the neshama is destined to do. That's the kind of nesinas kayach that the Eibishter gives the neshama. And that's what Beishamai meant when he says, Kala k'mois shehi. The Eibishter looks at every single neshama individually, as an individual. This is the type of the word shamai. Shamai also means when a person is sham or chaysav, a person measures and estimates and looks. The Rebbe here brings the famous Gemara b'negei to the ger that came to be nizgayer by Beishamai. And Beishamai was very critical. He looked, he asked him, why do you want to be a ger? What do you want to know? And the ger said, teach me the entire Torah al regal achas. So Beishamai dismissed him. Dochvay ba'amas abinyan. Al derech zeh, when the neshama comes into the world, the nesinas kayach that the Eibishter gives for the neshama is lefierach, his aveda, his personal aveda in this world. Ashenke Beisilul is chesed. Beisilul says the Eibishter is chofetz chesed, the Eibishter is kindness, generosity, and the Eibishter gives every single neshama kaychis beyond any akbalas. It's not based on what the particular shlichus and place and matzav that he's going to be in. The Eibishter is giving him kaychis b'li gvul when he enters into the world. When a neshama comes into the world, mashbiya naisei. What's the touch mashbiya naisei? Soiva. The Eibishter satisfies or saturates the neshama with tremendous amounts of kaychis, shaloi lefierach, his aveda in this world, which means that be'emes, a yid in his life has always a kayach to break out of any boundaries he thinks he has for whatever reason, based on his lifestyle. The emes is mitzad the kaychis that the Eibishter gives him when his neshama enters into the world. A neshama in this world has no boundaries whatsoever. That's the kind of kayach the Eibishter gives the neshama when it enters into the world. That's what Beisilul says. So this is all regarding the neshama entering into the world. What kind of nesinas kayach does the neshama get coming into this world? That's the marriage of the neshama. Now comes the gedushin. What's the concept of gedushin? Gedushin is a person's living life. He's living life in this world, and then certain nisyanis begin. He's having a tough time. He's struggling. There's challenges. There's all kinds of issues, and a person starts rethinking his life. Am I in the right place in life? Am I doing the right thing? Maybe I got it all wrong. Maybe I have to move to a different place. Maybe I have to do something. The person starts finding all kinds of reasons, whether they're excuses or they're real hardships that he has that are pushing him to change course in his life. That's really what the concept of Gittin is all about over here. The Gittin is when a person feels like he has to disconnect, he has to recalibrate what's going on. He has to go into a new direction over here. So over here, Beis Shammai and Fishel will argue, what are enough grounds for a person to make such a kind of a change in his life? When could a person say, the place I'm in my life is not working out, and he's justified to make a real change in his life? That's the Maseches of Beis Shammai and Fishel. And over here, you'll see how Beis Shammai is very machmer. Beis Shammai is very stringent about this. Beis Shammai says, when a person is in a place in his life, and he's having all kinds of nisyanis, you have to think it over again. You have to try again, push again. You have to push ad mesiras nefesh mamish. There could be hardships, real difficulties. But afal pikein, if b'poyel b'ashgacha pratis, you were placed in this matzav, that means that you have koiches to deal with it. You have these things that you can take care of over here, and the Eibishter wants you to take care of that birur in that place. It's not going easy, and it's not going easy, but you have an asimis koich to do it. And the fact that there's a hardship is not a siman that it's not your shlichus. Adarabba. This itself could be a siman that this is exactly what your entire shlichus is. On another occasion, the Rebbe said the famous thing that it says, "B'negei to Adam Arishin," that Dafke Adam Arishin, he had that one mitzvah which was such a big nisai, the mitzvah of not eating from the Eitz Hadas, and that was his mitzvah, that was his shlichus that he had then, the ikir inyan of the La'avdo L'Shomra in Gan Eden. So when a person feels like that there's something that comes up, and it's like it's a roadblock. He doesn't know how to move, where to go, what to do, and he feels so stuck. Adarab, it's a siman that dafke in this inyan is a special nesinas kayach. So therefore, Beis Shammai says you can't divorce yourself of your aveda. You can't just walk away and try to avoid it and try to see maybe there's another place, something else that I can do that will just be easier, and drop it. And lamai, the person has to put in all his effort. Only time there's a heter for a person to divorce himself from his Aveda is if he sees something very real, al pitera, that there's a dvar Aveda here, that he's in a place, in a situation, that he's mamish coming to do Avedas, that he's falling so low, that he's mamish, it's a situation where there's heipach HaTorah mamish, then he has no choice. So then he's going to have to make a change. That's Beis Shammai's opinion. Mashenkin Fishel says, and here Fishel is more makel. Fishel says, if a person serving the Eibishter and he sees that there's hardships in his Avedis Hashem, Gittin tafshilei. What does Gittin tafshilei means? That it got burnt. The Rebbe brings the famous Gemara that says that by Ish and Isha, so Zachu Shechina Shruya B'neim, the Ish and the Isha have Shem Yudke that bring them together, the Shechina that brings them together. But if you take out Shem Yudke, so then it's Ish, it's fire. That's why the Mishnah here says this example of a Gittin tafshilei. Mentioned before that Rambam says Gittin tafshilei doesn't literally mean Gittin tafshilei. It means b'chlal, if they're not getting along, she's not listening to him. Why does it say dafke Gittin tafshilei? Because the Ish and the Isha are really supposed to work together like a neshama and a guf, where they work harmoniously, they support each other, and one the neshama directs the guf, and the guf brings out the neshama, and they work hand in hand. What happens if the Gittin tafshilei, meaning that a person doesn't see atzlach in his aveda? He's in a certain shlichus in life, wherever it may be, as a yeshiv vayel, as a bal lesek, wherever his shlichus in this world is, and he feels like I don't see atzlach in my avedis Hashem. There's no dvar aveda, but he doesn't feel fulfilled. He doesn't feel like there's a success in what he's doing. So Fishel says that alone, that a person sees over a period of time, if there's no atzlach in his aveda, that's enough of a reason for a person to rethink the place he's living, the place of his shlichus, and the kind of shlichus he's doing, to maybe change, to maybe do something else. So Fishel is more makel in this inyan, that it's not necessarily demanded of a person to go mamish ad kedei mesiras nefesh. Rabbi Akiva comes along and says even more makel. Rabbi Akiva says if a person is living in this world and he's doing his shlichus, he's doing his aveda, and he doesn't feel like a schmack. He doesn't feel like he's waking up in the morning fresh and he's running to do his shlichus in this world. And that's what Rabbi Akiva means when he says, Motza cheres noi meno. He comes to a conclusion, he sees there's a different kind of Aveda, which is so much geschmack, there's something else that I could do that I'll just appreciate and live with much better. Then he can divorce himself from his Aveda. He can make a change in his life. That's enough of a reason for a person to make a change. So Rabbi Akiva basically is telling you that an integral part of a Yid's Aveda is the Avas Hashem, the Simcha, the geschmack in what you do. So if that's lacking, it's enough of a reason to divorce himself of his Aveda. That's the word over here in the pshat of the machlekes of Beishamai, Beisilul, and Rabbi Akiva. What's the halacha in Shulchan Aruch? So here the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. We always know that Beishamai and Beisilul, the halacha is like Beisilul. Not only that, Beishamai, the Mok and Beisilul ain't a Mishnah. It's like the opinion is not even counted as part of a Mishnah b'chlal. And over here as well in Shulchan Aruch, the halacha is like Beisilul. And the reason why the halacha is like Beisilul is because, on one hand, to demand from everybody in halacha and Shulchan Aruch as an average psak din that everyone is mechuyev to stick to his aveda where he's experiencing very difficult challenges at kidei mesiris nefesh mamish, that's not a psak din in Shulchan Aruch. On the other hand, to say that every person is on a level where he's so involved in the aveda with avos Hashem and yiras Hashem, and the moment he feels like he's lacking that simcha and avos Hashem, he could immediately make a switch. That's really a tzaddik gomer is on such a level. A person that's a tzaddik gomer can say, I know I have kaiches to serve the Eibusher with avos Hashem and yiras Hashem and with simcha, so why am I doing a second class of aveda? But for a bani, for an average person, if he's lacking that geschmack, that avav yidin is avedus Hashem, it's not a reason to drop it. You're accomplishing something on your level. So therefore, the psak din of Shulchan Aruch for the bani, for the average person, is like Beisilul. That a person has difficulties, he has to work it out and try to work and see that he should be successful. If over time he doesn't see atzlacha, so then he has to go and figure out and see and ask Aseh l'charav to see what he has to do with himself. But the Rebbe here brings that there's one of the Paiskin, one of the Rishonim I think it still is, that over here he says that the psak din is like Beishamai. I didn't see it inside. Why Taka is this an exception? Pashat al Pi Nigla. Why would he say such a thing that over here we paskin like Beishamai? But he says here we paskin like Beishamai. So the Rebbe says, even though in Shulchan Aruch it's not brought, but the fact that such a concept in one of the Rishonim is brought that we paskin like Beishamai shows that the Aveda, the approach of Beishamai, that a person should be dedicated to a shlichus and an Aveda that he's doing b'ashgacha pratis at kidei mesiris nefesh, has a makim even in halacha b'payil. That because the emes is that the Eibusher gives a yid keiches to continue and be committed to his aveda that he does at kadei mesiris nefesh. Okay, that's the pshat here in the Mishnah. Okay, so the nekudas advarim that it comes out from this is that when a yid comes into this world and he has his shlichus, and it's very, very easy sometimes for a person to just say to himself, this is not for me, and I can't do this, and I don't see atzlacha. But the message over here of the last Mishnah of Maseches Gittin is that a person cannot separate himself from his aveda in this world so quickly. The teichen, the nekuda of this Mishnah here is you have to think over before a person wants to divorce himself from his aveda in this world. So here the Rebbe says that this is the connection to the inyan of the Mizbeach. And here the Rebbe brings the Gemara in Ksubis that says regarding the Mizbeach that the Mizbeach has a Rosh Tevis. And the Rebbe points out that the Gemara talks about the Rosh Tevis of Mizbeach and has a whole shakla v'tarya about this Rosh Tevis. It's very unusual. The Gemara not very often talks about Rosh Tevis and a discussion about Rosh Tevis, but what's the Rosh Tevis of Mizbeach? Mizbeach, the Gemara says, is Meziach, Mezin, Mechavev, and Mechaper. That's what the Mizbeach is. What do these words mean? Meziach means that it removes. And the Gemara discusses there exactly what it removes, and we'll explain. Mezin, it feeds. Mizbeach is the place, the source of where we're zeicha to get mezainis, the Eibusher feeds us. And Mechavev, and it brings out the love of Yidden to the Eibusher, and the Eibusher to Yidden, and Mechaper, the kapara of the Eibusher to Yidden. So the Gemara there asks, what does Meziach mean? But it removes what? So first the Gemara says, Mestamem, Meziach means it removes Avedis. But the Gemara says, if so, why does it say in the Gemara to say there, Meziach, and then later it says Mechaper? Meziach and Mechaper should go together. So the Gemara says, Meziach means it removes Gzeiris. that the Eibishter removes any bad decrees from Yidden, the Eibishter feeds Yidden, and then the love and the kapara. So the Rebbe explains what's the pshat in this Gemara. Here you see in the Gemara a amazing thing about a Mizbeach. The Pashtos, in order for Yidden to be Zeiche, to Meziach, Mezen, that the Eibishter should remove a Gezeire, and the Eibishter should be Mezen Yidden, should give them a Zaynis, what's the Seder? The Seder L'chayr is first that if there's Avedis that separate between the Eibishter and Yidden, so you have to have a kapara first. You have to bring about the Chavivas of Yidden first. Only after a kapara, then could come Meziach and Mezen. So how is the Rosh Hashanah and Mizbeach in the opposite Seder? First Meziach, Mezen, the Eibishter removes all the Gzeis. The Eibishter gives a Yid Parnasa, Mezayna, Chaya, Mezayna. And then after that comes the kapara, the Chavivas and the kapara. It's Hepech HaSeder. The Rebbe teaches, that's why the Gemara Lachatchila thought the Pashtus that Meziach means to remove the Avedis, because if you don't remove the Avedis first, how could there be any place for Yidden to be worthy to have Parnasa? Elamai says the Rebbe here in this Gemara, you see the Pnimi's the Ge'inyan of what a Mizbeach is. The Mizbeach expresses the unconditional love from the Eibishter to Yidden. That even if a Yid is Dir Avedis, and there was no Kapara yet, and the Chavivis Gluya, the open and revealed Chavivis of Yidden and Eibishter is not revealed yet. But nevertheless, when the Karbanis are brought in the Mizbeach, it reveals the essential love between the Yid and the Eibishter. The love of the Eibishter to Yidden is like a father to a son. And a father to a son will give the child what he needs to live, and will give the child what he needs, Parnasa, Mezainis, even before it comes to the Mechav and Mechaper. The first thing is, a Yid zal haben, betoiv, anirv, anigla, everything that he needs, begashmis, beruchnis. Afterwards, that's ma'oyer a Yid to reconnect and do what he has to, and then comes the Mechav and the Mechaper. That's the Seder in the Gemara. So the Mizbeach that shows on this unconditional connection of the Eibishter to Yidden. So says the Rebbe, that's why the Gemara brings this inyan of the Mizbeach when it comes to a Yid that goes through with a Gedishin. What's the inyan of the Gedishin? Gedishin basically means that a person is setting certain conditions. This I could connect to, this I'm divorcing from, he has difficulties, he has challenges in his Avedis Hashem, so he gets all flustered. And he decides to disconnect from the Eibishter. In other words, if it's going easy, if Segeit Geschmack and it's good and he likes it, so then he continues. The moment it's a difficulty or it's even to the point where it's mamish, it's hard to deal with, so over here the person drops it. So the Gemara Mizbeach made all of the mois that you forgot about the connection of the Mizbeach. If the person is going through with this divorce of his Avedis Hashem, so he's connecting to the Eibishter in a very conditional way, you forgot about what the message of the Mizbeach is. The Mizbeach says that the Eibishter says, I'm giving you unconditionally. I'm giving you whether there is Avedis, no Avedis. Miziach amazing. The Eibishter removes all Gzeidus and gives a Yid Taiva Nirav Anigla even before anything. The Rebbe said Kama Pomim, the last year has been negated to the Lashon that we say in Tachnon. So we say that Vuhu Yifta Yisrael Mikol Tzaraisav, Pedelekim is Yisrael Mikol Tzaraisav, that is, Vuhu Yifta Yisrael Mikol Avinaisav. That to say the psukim that we say is, first the Eibishter takes a Yid out of his tzaras, and only afterwards that comes Mikol Avinaisav. The same Seder like it is by the Mizbeach. So here the Gemara is saying that a Yid has to remember this inyan of the Mizbeach, and when it comes to an inyan, his connection to the Eibishter and his Avedis Hashem, not to Chas v'Shalom disconnect. That's why it says Dafka the Mizbeach is made all of the moist. One more very geschmack in the Kudah that the Rebbe speaks about here in this Hadran is negated to the inyan of Gittin, where it's the famous Shaila that all the Mefarshim ask that from Masechta Gittin you go to Masechta Kedushin. That's the Seder. So the Shaila obviously is, L'chayre, the Seder should have been first Masechta Kedushin and then Masechta Gittin. It's out of order. Why the Seder of Gittin and then Kedushin? So there's different Pirushim in this, and the Taich that the Rebbe says is that over here, what the Seder is telling you is that the purpose of Gittin is to come to a higher level of Kedushin. The whole inyan of Gittin is, if a Yid is in a situation where there's an inyan of a get, which is the fact that he's divorcing himself, disconnecting himself from the Eibishter to one degree or another, and of course, generally speaking, what the inyan of Gittin refers to is the inyan of Galus. In different psukim, it describes the union of Galus as an union of Gittin, between the Eibishter and Yidden. So a person looks at a get, and b'chitzenius, it looks like that the Yid is agahakt. He's separated. He's divorced. Ad kedei kach, the pasuk in the Medrash uses an expression that says that in the time of Galus, Yidden could turn to the Eibishter and say, that's it, we're divorced. I have nothing to do with you, you have nothing to do with me, so now you have no tightness. Now a Yid could say to himself, I can do whatever I want. What's the emes? The emes though is, a Yid is never separated. A Yid is never divorced from the Eibishter. And the whole union of the divorce is b'chitzenius. It's just to reveal a deeper connection that comes out and that follows afterwards, which is the Masechta of Kiddushin that comes dafka after Masechta Gittin. So the Rebbe brings here from what it says in the Gemara on Daf Tzadik, Amar Aleph. The Gemara here asks, what happens if a person divorces his wife in a situation where al pi Torah he wasn't supposed to? What happens now? Should he remarry her? Does he have a chiyuv to remarry her? Or, even if he divorced her in a time that he wasn't supposed to, but b'diavad, once it's done, it's done. He doesn't have to remarry her. And the Gemara's maskana is, when it comes to a get, b'diavad, once it's done, even though al pi Torah he wasn't supposed to, once it's done, he doesn't have to remarry her. That's the maskana of the Gemara. So the Rebbe says, what the Gemara is really trying to bring out over here is that there's a certain inyan in Gedish and Gufa, that is a Metzias Ba'olam that the Eibusha created, because from this Yerida comes out a tremendous aliyah. There's a certain Pnimius and Gedish that reveals a deeper connection between Yidden and the Eibusha. The Rebbe points out a few different pratim that negate to the get itself, which shall be pashtus as a pella. Number one, the get has halachis of being written like a Sefer Torah. A shtar that's being written like a Sefer Torah is what's being used for a get. The lines in the get, the 12 lines of the get, Tosfos says right in the beginning of the Masechta, are taken from. Why 12 lines? Because of the lines that are the hefsek between the Chumashim, Bereishis, Shmais, Vayikra, and Bamidbar, the hefsek of the 4 lines of the 4 Chumashim, so that's the lines of a get. Vaita connected to an inyan of Torah. Why is the inyan of a get connected to such kind of inyanim of Torah? The Torah calls a get a sefer krisis. It's a inyan of a sefer Torah. What's the connection of a get to a sefer Torah? Elamai, the answer is because the pnimius of the inyan of a get is not a hefsek. It's not really an inyan of gedushin. Between the Eibishter and Yidden, it's not shaykh for there ever to be a hefsek. There's no such a thing. What's the inyan of this get? The inyan of the get is to be megala, a deeper connection, a deeper kedusha that there is between the Yidden and the Eibishter. That's the inyan of the get. And the Rebbe is meidach there in this inyan. So that's the seder of the Masechta, first Masechta Gittin, and then Masechta Kiddushin. One more prat, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe explains according to this, is if you look Masechta Gittin, there's one machlekes that keeps on coming up throughout the Masechta. The most negeidige machlekes to the whole Masechta Gittin is the machlekes of Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Meir. What's the machlekes of Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Meir? Whether Eide Chsime Karti or Eide Mesire Karti. What makes the get a kosher get? The Eidim that actually sign inside the get, you remember? Or the Eide Mesire Karti, or the Eidim that are there when you give the get. That's the most basic machlekes in the Masechta that comes up again and again. So the Rebbe teaches al derech haremez that the machlekes about Eide Chsime and Eide Mesire is that a get is Torah. A get is a gilui of Torah to elevate a yid to a higher level. And in Torah, there's Torah should be ksav, and Torah should be peh. And Torah should be ksav, and Torah should be peh. There's a mila to Torah should be ksav, but there's a mila to Torah should be peh. The kedusha of Torah should be ksav is much greater. But on the other hand, without Torah should be peh, you can't be mekayim any of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Dafka and Torah should be peh, you have the pirish of how to fulfill Torah. Not only that, the Rebbe brings a medrash that says the reason why the Eibusha didn't give Yidden everything b'chsav is because if Yidden would have the Torah, everything b'chsav, so then the Goyim would take the Torah for themselves. But like this, Yidden have a tradition. Yidden have an oral tradition, a Torah Shebal Peh, that's given over b'Meseira from Moshe to Sinai to all the Chacham of all the generations, and this is something that only Yidden have. In that sense, Torah Shebal Peh expresses the pnimius of Torah even more than Torah Sheb'chsav. The love of the Eibishter for Yidden, that the Eibishter wants Dafka Yidden to have the Torah and not the Goyim, where is that Dafka in the Torah Shebal Peh? So therefore the Rebbe says, the machlekes of Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Meir, what's the halacha? The halacha, the Gemara there's a whole entire Amud, I think it's that Peivav Amud Beis, the Gemara brings the whole Amud of a bunch of Amiram that keep on repeating again and again. The halacha is like Rabbi Lazar, the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar. Why is the Gemara emphasizing so much halachas like Rabbi Lazar? To bring out the maila of the Eidem Mesira. The Eidem Mesira, the Eidem that are not written inside the get, they're Bal Peh. They're just standing and watching what's going on. That's the maila of Torah Shebal Peh, not what's inside the Ksav of the get. And that's the Iker maila of Torah. That's where the love of the Eden comes out, more even than Torah Shebal Ksav. That's what the Rebbe teaches us in. This is a Fabrengen, which has more than I said, and it's also a Fabrengen which was recorded. Chafav Tavshin Yites. It's available on your what's the Jam app called? The new Ashreinu app. You can listen to it. It's a gewaldige Fabrengen. If you have time, listen to the Fabrengen. Hadran Allah Maseches Gittin v'Hadran Chalon. Pass me now, please. Titan Allah Maseches Gittin v'Hadran Chalon. That's national Maseches Gittin. That's national. Leibam Dein v'Leibam B'Dasi. That's what we're Hadran Allah Maseches Gittin. Hadran Chalon. That's Maseches Gittin. Hadran Chalon. That's national Maseches Gittin. That's national. That's Hadran Allah Maseches Gittin. Hadran Chalon. Right on Allah Maseches Gittin. Right Chalon is Oster. That's what we're Chanina ba Papa, Rami ba Papa, Nachma ba Papa, Choi ba Papa, Abamari ba Papa, Rachma ba Papa, Rachma ba Papa. Wanneer je zo lang zijn, mooi met het mensen dat er niet. Heute man achten, nachher wir sind nicht zusammen zu kennen, wir wissen nicht, wir sind kein Mensch kommen, schon Maschinen, just before I say the Ratzin and Kaddish, I just want to mention, first of all, Agresi Ashikayach to Rabbi Avram Ratban, that is Mishtadel always put together the Siyum, and Bechlal the Shiyurim over here in Crown Heights, this Siyum, the Shiyurim, and many other Shiyurim. And Rav Mendel Levin that brought the Gemaras here from Borough Park, and the Gemaras are sitting on the table. If you're going to start Masechta Kiddushin, take the Gemara with yourself free of charge and learn through the Masechta. It's a very geschmack in Masechta. Ratzim ufanecha Adonai Elohai k'sheshen Gittin came to Israel and asked himself to swear Machel and Masayim Lum and the last of the time for his own to say about his chuskot and Ram and Ram and Ram Yam and Yud Zari Zari Adel and Fiskaim and stuff like that. Kivi here we am achve sivul chashneis chaim. Oirich yom v'mina b'smagalesh b'chavit. Adonai yez lam yitain. Adonai yivarech asami v'asholem. Zerachiyuv. It's a kaddish. Brisky.
Skada shmei Rabbi. Chusir yama chusir yasum b'karim b'karim b'sheichen. Chayech l'mechel chayt b'sav gazman karim ramein. Shmei Rabbi. Yisbarach b'shach 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 Das Salash mit Kutsche Brecha, dem Khasam Shiras, Khasam Masad Amin Yom, Ramein, Sabra von Walt Hamidem, Kotam Sem Kommandas Miraisa. Die was den Khalas Sai, Helen kan Sem Rabbi Khista, Rab Khan Rigel Zain Rigel, kan kon die Shmaim, Ramein, Sam Rab Shmaim kan tem men kan Israel, Ramein. Sham Ramein, Sham Leil, Kal Yisrael,